Alright, welcome to the new Toll TV. Let's see if I can get you a good angle on this. This is a tea caddy box and it opens up and there's little pockets on the side where you can pull your tea bags out, and there's 4 slots to do that. I've got rooster and words and banding and all kinds of shortcuts to share with you. I just had a blast. We've got shading, we've got antiquing medium, dry brushing, what else? Just all kinds of crazy weird shading for lettering and things like that. So I'll give you one more flip around here if I can get my hand in the right general vicinity. Okay, and that's our project, and I hope that you enjoy. Alright, the prep for this is pretty simple. The first thing I want to do is take off my hardware and stuff like that so that I don't get paint all over them. That's just a screwdriver. I think you can figure that out. This part's a little bit trickier because people don't realize it's there. These are the holes to screw in the Lazy Susan base. And so you just line it up with where the screw is, and then that'll dismantle that. So you want to strip all your hardware first, and then I use a little piece of tape to attach my hardware to, and that just keeps everybody, together. Alright, I have all of my parts disassembled, and now I'm going to put on some nitrile gloves. These are latex free, which I have a latex allergy myself, but they're also chemical free, or not chemical free, but they protect from all the chemicals that are in all these solvents and paints and stains and things like that. So they are tough little gloves, and they last and last and last. I'm going to put out multi-purpose sealer. This is a sealer that you can use for all kinds of projects, and I'm going to use my foam, my varnish sponge, which is also a base coat sponge, and it's also a sealer sponge. So I'm just going to press it into the medium. It's dry. You could have it be moist or wet. I'm on my non-stick mat so that when I lay pieces around on it, it's not going to make a big sticky mess all over my surfaces. And then I'm just going to apply a nice even coat as I go around the edges. I want to make sure that I even everything out. Don't let anything drip. Okay, and then inside, of course, this is awesome for inside. You just reach in there, just when you get into the corners, the sponge, you get some on the edge of your sponge, it just takes care of that corner right there for you. Okay, this is going to make some grain rise, so once it dries completely, then you'll want to sand it, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Alright, after I've got everything cleaned, or everything with the multi-purpose sealer, then what I'll do is I'll wash out my sponge and I'll squeeze it out really good. If you can't get all the water out because your hands are, getting like, maybe don't have the strength that you want them to have, you can fold it up in a paper towel and stand on it, and then it weeps into the paper towel. And that'll get it nice and wet dry, if you will. And then we're going to use it to base coat after we've sanded as well. Okay, when your surfaces are dry, then you'll get to sanding. And the sanding is a very important step, because if you are maybe not the best painter in the world, surface preparation can save you. It can make your painting much better. Sanding discs, the ones that we have, come in 4 different grits. This side is 100 grit, this side is 80 grit, this is like 220, and then 400 or something like that. So what you do is you start with the roughest, okay, and you go with the grain of the wood. And you just lightly sand it. It doesn't take a lot of work. These just last for a long time. And then that takes it down a notch, and then I'm going to flip it over to the other side, which will smooth it a little bit more. Then I'm going to go to the next one. And you can hear the amount of scratchiness is definitely reducing. Listen to here. Okay. Then I'll go to the very smoothest. Now what we don't want, notice that I'm not pressing or really working too hard. Now that's nice and smooth versus, okay. I want it smooth, but if it gets too glassy, then your paint won't stick to it. Okay, so we don't want glassy. Okay, and I'll just continue on all my pieces until I get them all sanded. One of the things that these are very well made pieces, and they're so well made that the edges can be a little bit pointy and sharp. Okay, they come smooth, but boy, they've really kept that nice sharp edge. What I do when I have something like that is I go ahead and just give a quick swipe just to take that sharpness. I mean, you could actually, you know, damage yourself on this. And then I just take off the edges there on all of those, and do that everywhere where it makes sense. You don't want to antique it or distress it, but I really just don't like really, really sharp edges on things. Okay, the very next thing we're going to do is we're going to get out our base coat color, and we're going to base the outside of the box in the red. Now I think, going back and forth, I think I'm going to make my lid green. So I'm going to make the whole base on the box the red. We'll see how this works. You know, lucky you, you get to come along for the ride, right? And so we just want one coat of this color on there. And what that's going to do for us is that's going to dry, and then I can do my background technique, and it won't lift and expose the wood color of the surface. Okay, so you just wipe that on. Isn't this the easiest way to base coat that you've ever seen? Simple Simon. It's just fast and simple. Okay, so if I'm going to do my trim and my bands in the green, then I will more than likely need to, I could probably do the black base red, I will more than likely need to make the inside of the box the green color as well. So that way when it shows underneath where the tea bags go, it'll show right. So then I'll just rinse the sponge out, and then I'll do my green color the same exact way. Okay, the next thing I want to do is get my big, giant, oval glaze brush. These are so important to have. Everybody needs one. The reason that this is fantastic is it's cut like a filbert brush, and it's also shaved from end to end. So when I'm slip slapping, it doesn't leave blunt stop and start marks in my paint. And it's big enough. Watch what happens when I load it with paint. It's crazy, crazy big enough. Like, it can actually get as big as that. Okay, see how wide that is? It's like a 2-inch spread right there. It's an awesome brush. Very flexible, does a lot of neat, neat tricks. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves a base coat of the color. And I could use my varnish sponge to do this. I haven't decided on my banding and my colors yet. But because I want to slip slap, I'm just going to do it all at one time with this. Okay. Get that kind of evenly done. If I have too much of this light kind of color in there, I may need to go ahead and do one more coat of my base. But I think I'm going to try not having that. And I'm going to use Autumn Red, which is a new color. It's a really nice companion for red pieces. Okay, and I just want to slip slap just a little hair of background color. I might even go a little heavier. You have all the time in the world. Now I'm doing this dirty brush, and what that means is that I'm going to be able to get a good blend of paints. If I did this with just on dry paint, then I would get a very harsh light line kind of thing. And I'm just doing little X's, little pity-pat strokes. And when I get out to the outer edge, I'm going to get into my red paint and blend that back in. Okay, you want it nice and blended. I like the splotchy, paintbrushy look myself, so that's what I'm going to go for. And then we're going to do the other sides. Alright, I need to make my bottom green band. I want it to be the same size as my top green band. Okay, so what I'll do is I could take a ruler and measure, but this is infinitely faster. Take my half pipe compass, which is a compass that has a lid on it so you don't get impaled on your pointy compass end. And it also has the replacement leads on board in the cap right here. Okay, so I'm going to measure it to size. And then what I'll do is I'll just run it along the bottom here, just going right to the tip of my arches, which I'm liking, because I was worried about that actually. Whoops, gotta keep it straight. Because this is elevated, it makes more sense to stand up to do this piece. Okay, and we get all of our sides done all at the same time. All right. So then what I'll do is I'll tape and base my bottom band with the green. All right, so now I've got my tape taped, and I'm going to pinch it down with my thumbnail. And then now to get this nice and clean and everything, what I'm going to do is use my jumbo dauber. I don't want bleeding under, and I want it to base coat nice and quickly. So I'm just going to tap that on there, and what's nice is on these odd edges, that is going to really help me get it base coated. Okay, so I'll just do that, and then because I'm tapping straight up and down, I won't get the bleed under that you can get when you brush. These jumbo daubers and ink sweepers cover a big amount of space all at one time. They're reusable, and you just clean them up and then you can use them again. And they also help you not have any of that sneaking under the tape. Alright, as I'm considering my color choices, I am chickening out of my red and green. I like the red and green together, and I know it's going to be different when I get it masked, but I don't like how small my band has become. So what I think I'm going to do is go with the darker red and the red and de-emphasize that band a little bit. So I think that's the direction I'm going to go. This is what you do sometimes. You just go ahead and do a prep base and just see. The mix that I've got is I've mixed my soft black with my deep burgundy. And then I'm just going to go ahead and base over those and see where we get at that point. Okay, as I'm getting ready to do these edges up here, I thought you'd like to see a little shortcut. If you brush the edges like this, then what will happen is you'll get a leak on this side or a leak on this side. So with these little daubers, this is the ink sweeper, I can just tap a big long row, and I don't get bleed under either side because these are super non-absorbent. And so I can just tap them straight on, and as long as I don't push real hard, like you don't want to go on there. And sound effects are free. Anyway, so then I'll just go back around. It'll dry in just a lick split, and then I'll have my edges all done. Alright, as I'm getting ready to trace my pattern, I've got the rooster on the front, and I want to space my pattern evenly on this piece. So what I'm going to do is take my Ghostwriter and my T-square, and this is 7 inches across, so I know that I'm going to be at 3.5 inches, and that'll be my center line. And then what I can do is I've got my pattern all traced on here, and then I'll just lay my pattern right on my centering line. And what I did is I gave myself a straight line across here that was on my paper from when I printed out my font. So I transferred that line on, folded it so that this line folded straight on itself. Okay. Then I pierced it up the middle, and I lined up these letters on either side so that that told me where the midpoint was for my lettering. So now I will line this up, center it north and south, and trace it. All right, I'm getting ready to paint my lettering. I'm going to use the number 2 Pro Round, and I'm going to fill my brush with paint. Okay, and the reason I'm going to do that is I'm flattening it and I'm filling it. I don't want to fill it by scooping. Okay, that's not the right thing. I'm flattening my brush in the paint and fully loading. That means that you might get some stuff junked up in your ferrule, but then you use the Winsor Newton brush cleaner and it cleans it all out. Okay, so flatten it in. And the difference between round brushes, this is a round brush, and you can say, well, like, why am I going to use a round brush to base coat flat things? A flat brush, okay, a round brush, if it's made this way, I won't say correctly because there are different purposes, but it will come to a perfectly wonderful chisel, and they hold more paint and they distribute it better than do flat brushes, and I can make perfect C strokes and things like that. So as I'm getting ready to do this, this is wow. And what we'll do is we'll simply find our line and then just follow along the line and base coat. Okay, and this base coat is honey brown. Okay, before I put my details on my lettering, I'm going to use the triple threat eraser, which has these sharp edges on it, and I want to get rid of any lines that I didn't quite get to. If you even so much as put a wash of color over your chalk lines or your tracing lines, then what that does is it seals the line under. So before I start washing and floating, I want to get rid of those letters, those tracings. All right, next we're going to use, I've got the new curved flat. I've got number 6. I'm not sure, I won't have to move up a size, but we'll see. I'm going to shade with milk chocolate. What I like about this brush is its ability to walk up, and that makes me a happy camper. So I'm going to start at the bottom. Okay, and I may need to just go ahead and base coat that up. I think that might be a smarter thing to do. That is not making me happy. I want to come quite up the base of this letter. So what I'm going to do is I'll just switch gears here, back to my round brush, and I'll base the base of the letter, and then I'll let this, the round brushes, amazingly, if they're done right, can be dry brushes as well. I want a middle color, which is going to be the base color there, and I'll just flip that up so now it becomes a dry brush. The dry brush, not the rubbing kind of dry brushing, but the dry brushing that leaves like a streaky dried look. So I'll just let that, some of that flip up there. Okay, and bring those two lines converging together and leave it be a little bit, feathered, I guess. And then we'll take the new color Spicy Mustard. And see if we like that for our highlight. And with this, what we'll do is we'll come down from the top. This may be too bright. I'm looking at it and it just seems like it's, yeah, it's gonna, see how that contrast is instantly so light. So that's the wrong color. When we get into talking about color and stuff like that, let's go talk about this for a second. If I put a dot of that on there and it is so bright it instantly just lifts itself off, it's not sitting well together, that means it's just way, way too bright. Either it's the color saturation, the brightness of the color, or the lightness of the color compared to, and this is a very dull color and this is much more clear, cleaner, brighter kind of color. So we want to be careful of that. And on that note of color, let's talk about a couple new color tools that we have. This is a poster. It's a studio color wheel, and it's in a little folded up thing. And what's neat about this is really a unique take. It has all your color families going all the way around. It's affordable, which I like. It's not got that laminated stuff. But it goes down here and it gives you the lighter hues. It gives you more of a pure thing, and then it gives you the mixed with the shadow values. Okay, so like the highlight, or mixed with white, mixed with black, and then the basic color that it is. Okay, and then what it does on each of these little wings, here are these paddles, is it gives you the different color schemes that you could use with this. So on every one of these you have 5 different kinds of color schemes that would be appropriate to use. So as you're trying to decide your palette, you might be deciding that you like the tea box, but maybe you want it done in blues. Well, you can come over here and maybe you would choose those colors instead to paint your chickens and things like that. The opposite side has also got a poster on it, and it has the color wheel with all these textures and fibers and things like that. Very multimedia kind of effect, but it's the front side or the other side that has all the useful information. Okay, and it just folds all back up. You can hang it on your wall or have it folded for reference. We've also come back in with the 3-in-1 color tool. Now the conversion needs to be adjusted, and I haven't gotten to that yet, but what they've done differently on this one is they also have each card, this is the green family, has all of your color choices that you can make here. Let's get you a little closer. Okay, and then on the opposite side, it gives you all the colors. It's got your pure colors, then mixed with white, mixed with black, and then mixed with grays. Okay, and then it also gives you the printing color mixtures as well, like the, oh, I can't think, CMYK things, and the RGB, and hex numbers for websites. So you've got all of your reference numbers all in the same place if you need them. That takes it a little too far for me. I don't usually need them, but it is nice if you ever do need them to have it all in one place. And it's got all of these color families, and it has your green and your red value finder as well. And if you look, let's look through here, green value finders affect the cool colors. Okay, so green is a cool color, it affects cool colors. Okay, red affects the warm colors. All right, so what that does is it neutralizes your warm colors, but you can see your cool colors through the red. And where that gets you when you're painting a project is you can see whether or not you have, like, just like what I just did with this color. If this is way too bright, I'm going to lay this over and I'm going to be able to tell if I'm way too bright. Okay, so that is what it does, and it really works if you work with it. You've got to actually see it. Maybe we'll do it on here. We'll get that there, and I'll put my dot of yellow color on here where we had it. Okay, and like you can see that that's kind of bright, but maybe if you're not experienced at seeing, okay, this isolates it, and look at that white dot that's in the middle of those letters. Okay, so what that means is if you can see it and it's a white dot like that, that means your contrast or you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. So that's what this does, and it also shows me my shading on my R as well. It shows how contrasty I am. So as I get painting, I would view through this and I would see, do I have a highlight area? Maybe I over highlighted my R, and maybe I needed some more highlight on my shine, and maybe that will be something that the value finders will tell me. It is for looking through and seeing if you have your values correct. And now I'll take off our screaming bright yellow. And I have one more thing to share. There's never a good time to bring out the whole thing, but these are 3 brand new products that we have. This is the color mixing recipes. This gives you a mixing chart on the back so that you can estimate how much. But what I love about this is, okay, say you want to mix this color green. All right, well, what would you start with? Okay, that's the question, is like, if you want to get to a green like this, where would you start? Well, what this does at the top of every page is it tells you these colors were mixed with cad orange, permanent light green light, and titanium white. The color names are not going to correspond with any color names in DecoArt or Delta or Josonia or anything like that. They're just artist names for colors. If we decide that we love this product, then I will probably convert those basic colors into names that are DecoArt names. But what this tells you is if you take a green like this and an orange like that and a white like that, that you are going to be able to get these colors on this page. And then the next page, it shows you different colors. Okay, and so it just goes through all the color families and it shows you all the colors that you can mix, and it tells you, so with just very few, you can get all these colors. Very, very, very well laid out reference book. I love, purples are very hard for people. I love this walk from baby blue all the way over to purple, and they're basically using, they've changed one of the colors here, but it's basically using the same color family. Very nice to have. How do you get your color a little bit more lilac? Like, how do you darken it down? Excellent. These colors are extraordinarily difficult to mix, and you need them when you need them, so this shows you how to do that. Wonderful little book. I think the price is $9.95. Very, very good deal. Alright, so I've made some technical decisions. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the number 12 curved flat and float bigger. I think my colors were coming out too bright to base coat them. It was just too much clarity. So now I'll walk this down my letter, making sure that I'm not too wet. If I'm too wet, then it will float around and do funny things. So a little bit drier float. The brush is big enough. And then what you'll do is you'll keep some Q-tips handy. If you go off, skating off onto the edges, what these do is they're super sharp and they'll clean up your mess, and then you don't have to go and pretend. And they'll last and last. They just really will do a whole project almost with just one. It doesn't disintegrate like a Q-tip does. Okay, so I'll keep floating the tops. I'll go ahead and do the tops of all the letters, at least of this letter. Let's see how I got off there. So I can just go right in there and clean up. Okay, now that I have all the tops done, then I'm going to take the milk chocolate and I'm going to shade the bottoms. And you want to leave that middle color in the middle. You can go back and reinforce if you feel like you haven't gotten it like edge to edge and stuff. You can attack it in sections and then up. And I'll go back to that one. And then just tickle it up. Okay, do the same thing here. As I go around skinny areas, I could twist this brush and just tickle with the toe. I don't have to have the whole brush flat the whole time. It's something strange. I don't know, this brush works really awesomely. I haven't been this excited about a brush in a long time. They did something super right. The hairs work. This is still the ones that I've been using since I did the poinsettia nutcracker. I did a magazine article on poinsettias. I did 4 nutcracker banners, all using the same brush. So it's gotten a lot of use and it's still performing awesomely. I haven't wrecked it yet, and I'm a pretty bad brush abuser. I know how to treat them, I just don't treat them very well. Okay, then I'll finish the shine word, but I want to show you the next step is going to be float a little bit less of the raw umber just to the bottom. Okay, and now you can kind of see things starting to take form. And so we want to leave some of the true ochre showing. We don't want to cover it all up. Okay. Then we'll go through with soft black. And that will be our drop shadow color. And I seem to always drop shadow. I'm going to add a little water to it. I always seem to drop shadow to the left side. I don't know why, it's just what I do. This is going to be wonderful for helping clean up any little foobar or yucky things. So I'll do left side and under. So left side and under. It's the number 2, and it's just brilliant for this. Look at how awesome that looks. Okay, so that is the details on that. I think we'll add some stripes or something else on these letters, but I haven't figured out what yet. Alright, for our chicken, we're going to use a couple of mixes of colors. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the golds on our chicken in honey brown. So that one's easy. You're just going to fill it. Oh, hello, that's the comb, right? Okay, no problem. That's going to be autumn red. Okay. So that should just be a little bit bright enough to be able to see on our red background, and then we'll highlight, of course, and shade it. Okay, so we'll get that done. I'm going to skip ahead. So the yellows are all going to be honey brown, and then the tail and this breast area down here, and it looks like I need to trace just a little bit more of my pattern, are going to be our mixed colors. Okay, we're all traced. So what we want to do is we want to make a couple of mixes. You can just brush mix them if you'd like. We're going to use a winter blue, I think it's winter blue, yeah, Williamsburg blue and desert turquoise together to make a turquoisey bluey green kind of color. I guess a bluey turquoisey kind of color. That's going to be for our tail feathers. You can lean to whichever direction you want. If you want a little bit more mellow, add a little bit more of the blue. Okay, we'll just get that, all of those back feathers, not these ones that stick out over them, but just the ones that are the tail feathers. Okay, our green that we're going to mix is going to be Hauser medium green with the winter blue. And it'll be about 50-50. Get it to where you like it. And that just tones that green down just a little bit. And that's going to be our leg and our feathers down here. Am I right about that? I think I'm right about that. So yeah. So just get them base coated. A lot of times when you're mixing colors, you'll find that you'll find one color on your palette that can multi-mix, and they call that being a mother color. So if I wanted to lighten these colors up, I might go into my antique white, and that's going to unify all the colors in the palette if I lighten everything with antique white, if that makes sense. That makes everything have something in common. And brush mixing is fine, base coating. I'm trashing this brush. When I'm done, I'm going to use my brush cleaner and recover everything just the way it was. I'm not trashing it as in abusing it, I'm just trashing it in I'm filling it up all the way to the brim with paint to base coat. Okay, give them 2 base coats if they need, and then erase your lines. Alright, we're going to use the number 6 curved flat brush, and we're going to use milk chocolate, and we're going to shade some of our chicken. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to shade to separate first. That's going to be a drier float. And so where the chicken feathers come under, you're just going to, let's get you in, I guess, a little closer. Oops. Okay, so we'll just go under to separate where things come up. It's not exact. Nobody's going to count your feathers. There's no feather police hiding out there. Okay, so just, you could totally streak these in and be very casual about it. He's kind of a folk art little bird here, so I'm treating it a little bit more base coaty than I normally would. And I don't have a feather drawn there. Now what I'll do is I'll turn them around and hit them from the other sides. But while I've got this angle, what I'm going to do is just shade here next to his beak, both sides. Okay, we'll do the same thing with his head. Go underneath his waddly thing. We can go right over the top of his back here. And then just walk that down and round the corner. Okay, that's going to start giving him some definition. It'll also start toning these colors. These colors are quite bright. All right, now come down this way when those are dry, and now I'll pull out. And I'm just, if you'll notice, I'm lifting my brush up, and I'm really just using the toe and bringing everything to a chisel. I'm doing a dry float. I'm not reloading any water at all. I think that's supposed to be one feather, but oh well. Serious about those feather police. Don't count feathers. Okay. Now we also need to go ahead, I'm going to do a real float, meaning with water. And I'm going to get underneath his comb or wattle or whatever this thing is. I think this is the wattle and that's the comb. Same thing down here. Go ahead and just shade that right along. On his tail feathers, same thing. Maybe we'll make that one be the whole one. We'll erase, probably should erase lines pretty much about now. Okay, then we'll do the same thing here. Bring all these lines up to separate. They don't need to be super beautiful. They just need to be dark, light, dark, light. And I'll go up here and see what I can see about this and bring some of these lines up. Look at my pattern. Just got tail feather. All kinds of strange action going on down here. Okay, I think he's... Okay, now let's do his legs at the same time. Now we've got things, and we'll just shade under. This is where I'm talking about this brush just floating down the leg. And just walk it on down, and something about that rounded start just makes it be awesome. As soon as we're dry, or not. Bring that down around on one side. That just gives his legs just a little bit of definition. And now let's get out a streaking kind of brush. I think I'm going to get out number 4, Patty's favorite dry brush. And what we'll do is find ourselves on the camera. We'll get out the golden straw color. We could try a little true ochre. I don't know about true ochre. It's got a good brightness, but it's also got a good strangeness. So just very dry, very, very dry, but not, don't let that catch up, sorry about that. We want to bring, and I'm just going to use the chisel of my brush, just some chisel-y, streaky strokes up in. We want them scratchy. You can splay out your brush to reinforce that. Some brushes are just not meant to be treated nicely. Okay, I just want some streaks and some scratches. A little bit of feathery texture. On those tips. You have to turn your brush sideways to get that. Okay. I think the true ochre is doing it. It's giving it a brightness without giving it a milky whiteness. Okay, and the same thing here. This will give us a little bit more opportunity for streaks. Start in and let it streak up. We're going to call this dry brushing because it is the act of making the paint look like dry, scratchy paint. Like it's very dry. Okay, we'll give it 2 little flicks there at the ends. I'll go back and reinforce as I need to. Scratch, scratch, scratch. You can bring it into the shadow area, but don't do too much. And I think up here, I think what we'll do is we'll pretend, ooh, too strong. If you have lumpy paint and you can set it down too sharply, that's what's going to happen there. We'll pretend like these are rows of feathers. Okay, and just give it a little bit of a textured look. His beak is going to be off the camera. There we go. Pulled in from the front of the beak. His tail feathers. Shape following strokes. Okay. And up his leg, you can just go up the middle on his leg and foot. Maybe highlight that little thing, whatever that thing is called. Okay. Okay, I erased some lines and saw that I forgot this one whole section of shading. So I'll go in with the milk chocolate and just shade that. I can shade here where this makes his little shoulder. Anywhere where you feel like you need to just reinforce, you can. I can also go into raw umber and I'll want to treat this gently. And I can deepen the shading very, very gently on this color because he's a little bit strong. Okay, so we can go here and just increase just a little bit of that detail back there. Okay. Same thing under his leg. Not everywhere. Unless you need it. Okay, you can see that's just a lot more detail. If you snuck all the way into raw umber right away, you would really regret it though. You have to go up value by value. That's why you don't ever see people just jumping straight to the final shadow color. Okay, we can also come underneath these little guys here. I'll step back to milk chocolate to define. And then I'll sneak back into the umber. See where I need it. This is when I look at the camera and I squint to see if I've got good values. Okay, the other thing that we can do is we can also take out that value finder and see if we can do this on camera. Everybody, this is the thing people ask me the most questions about. Okay, so we'll try it with green and we'll try it with red. Okay, so you can see the values and you can see the wings, right? But notice you can't see the wings on the parts that aren't shaded, so that shows you how much they're shaded. Now let's go see if we can see how much they're highlighted. Okay, so there you go. You can see the shading once again, but you really can't see the highlights very well, can you? There's no highlight, there's no highlight, just a barely bit. So let's go up a step with our little Scumbly fuzzy brush, our number 4 dry brush, into Golden Straw. Okay, and then let's add just that little dry flick within the color that we've already put on there. Okay, I think you can already see if you look at this area compared to this area how much difference we've made. And then here we're going to want to be really gentle, really light pressure. I don't want polka dots. Actually, polka dots would probably be kind of fun. We just want texture, not pattern. Same thing here. Ooh, bright. Ooh, look at that one screaming down there. Okay, we're highlighting, we're not base coating. Same thing with these. down to his beak. Whoop. And then look at his legs just a little bit. Okay, now we'll take a look at that, the value finders one more time. Okay, here is the red. Here is the green. See how you can see the highlights now. Do they look even? Okay, where do you want the interest to be? I see that I have a little bit more strong shadowing here in the middle of his body than I do up on the neck. Now I've got to decide what's going to be more interest grabbing. I think I'm going to leave this decision until later, but that is what the value finders do, is they show you how strong you've got things. Okay, when your mind can't separate the colors, it takes the color away and it makes it so that you can see the values. Okay, on the beak and the comb, I've mixed some of my antique white and my autumn red, and then I'm going to dry rub, which I'm going to use this crescent stencil brush, find a dry part of my paper towel, dry off all the paint I can, and then this I'll do a dry rubbing on. So we'll just rub on the comb area to give it a lighter, brighter. So here's what we face on this piece. We've got a very red background and we're trying to make a red comb. So I'm leaning it to a more coral type look, and then I'm going to give it washes of other colors, and then that should make it be, whoops, throw my brush on the floor. Now I'll go straight into antique white by itself with my dirty brush. Try and pop that up one more time. I'm going for like a grisaille technique here, and grisaille is where you are painting in grays. Okay, so got that. Now I'm going to take a very bright red, maybe my true red, and I'll make a little wash out of that if I can find my paintbrush. Very washy, 80% water, blot on my paper towel, and now I'll come over here, and all my darks will get darker and all my lights will get lighter or more red. And that gives me a nice rich red comb. Okay, so that's how we operate when, okay. We'll see what happens with that when it dries. Alright, I want to take plantation pine and my dry brush, and I want to just streak up my feathers, leaving some spaces. Treating them up individually, kind of. And I want to take also and get my leg down here. Let's just go ahead and base him darker. Just like a loose washy base. Not much paint in my brush over that green. Okay, and that gives him a little bit of anchoring. And then we'll streak up to the front with the plantation pine, allowing it just to kind of fade. And rub it. Okay, that just gives him a little anchor. And then we'll shade him with the plantation pine. And just cinch everything together there. Give him a little accent here. I think we're going to need to bring a darker color on board. And down the front of his breast as well. Okay, now he's got that kind of bodily green behind, bottle color green, but yet he's kind of self-highlighted, and he's got touches of that same teal and blue in there as well. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on his tail feathers. And take our green. You want to pull towards you. Okay, so I'm going to get a good angle. And we're just going to go ahead and feather out some green into the teal. I'm going to focus when I get next to those other feathers there. I don't want to mess up my yellow feathers. Just want streaks of some of this color in our tail feathers. Go in the shape following direction, and that just brings a little bit of that green into his tail, making it not be so I'm blue, I'm green. It's kind of my logic there behind that. And we'll go in and put a little bit of extra behind where these other feathers droop in. Okay. And you could make it a little stronger if you so desire. Kind of fun, huh? Okay, now we're going to put in some tail feather accents and highlights. I'm going to use this streaky brush. I'm just going to pull straight in. I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of Antique White Plus. Oh, it's going to get a little bit green. Let's see what happens. Okay, so he's got these streaks. I need streaks because that's the feathers, right? Can splay out my brush a little bit to get a little bit more streaky, scratchy look. And it's got to go back towards the line. Don't want it bright everywhere. Some of these little cut ends is kind of cool. Streak, streak. We'll cut around through. Reload and reshape your brush as you need to. Yeah. Okay, get them a little streaked. That just gives him the texture he needs. Okay, so we'll shade with Wedgwood Blue. That's better. Okay, we'll bring it along the back, tint those. And it gives it just a little bit of depth. Yeah. And we can shade down by his tail feathers the same color. Now that'll tint that green just a little blue, but that's okay. I'm wanting the tail feathers to be a little bit more tealy colored. Oof, that'll do it. This is Indian turquoise. And I'm really splaying out that brush. just a couple little ha-cha-chas here and there, make it look a little bit featherier. And then I think what we'll do is we'll take our dry rubbing brush and we'll pick up a little bit of the desert turquoise, rub off on the paper towel, and then we'll give his breast just a little bit of a highlight using that color. Okay, that kisses that color up front as well, and we could even give his little wingies a little kiss of that color too. That makes everybody a little more family. We've got some of the green on here and some of the blue on there. Okay, now I'm going to take Hot Shots Fiery Red and I'm going to take it up onto his comb, and I'm going to increase the luminosity of it. Dry brushing, except for my brush was wet. You can't have wet dry brushes. Let's see if we can do it now. Yeah, when they're wet, they're wet. So I'll just let that sit on top and that'll be fine. All right, I need to do some erasing and I need to put his final details on, but I think there's our chicken. Okay, I've got our eye on there. I'm going to put that on with some soft black. And then we'll take a microscopic dot of white, if I knew where my white was. Okay, we'll get our dot. Okay, now he's got a little eye. And I'm going to flip him around so I can see him. And you can't. Okay. I'm wondering if we need to line this little guy. Do a little bit of liner separation just to define. I'm using soft black. Just not lining all the way around, just lining to define. Try to decide how much that's adding to that. Sometimes lines get too heavy, and sometimes you miss them altogether. Becomes part of your shading if you do it judiciously. I think definitely on the tail feathers. Let's use a little more separation. maybe breast feathers. Okay, as I'm experimenting with my letters, I've gone a couple ways with them. I started out with them all in yellow, and then I think I've settled on these colorful ones, so I'm going to show you how to do that next. The nice thing about having multiple sides is I got to play around, and then I can finish. One thing that I did want to point out, and I was going to talk to you about this with this bottom right here. I've got my nonstick mat, which we've talked about a lot. It cleans up like a snap. You wouldn't even believe it. And because it's two-sided, you can just flip it over before you wash it off. But one thing that I've seen happen over and over again is people will have, like I've got this bespeckled paper underneath on my table. If this area gets messy and you set your project down, then you encrust stuff in the other side of your project. A lot of times this might not matter because you might be painting like a plaque. And the back is not important. But in this case, every surface of this is an important surface. So by having my nonstick mat, I can visually see instantly if I have anything because of the black color. They have some mats that are tan and stuff. It's a little bit harder to see. But because of this strong color, white would be ideal as well. I can tell if I have absolutely anything on here, dust, speckles, crunchies, anything. And I know when I set this down, I know that my surface is clean and that the backside of my project is also going to be clean. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to base coat these letters into solid colors. So the very first one, I'm going to go look and cheat. We're going to do it in the same blues and greens that we used on the rooster. That way, of course, our color family ties together. So that was the desert turquoise mixed with the Williamsburg blue. And you'll just get that there, and that's the color that you'll do your rise. And I did the green, which was the same green mixed with Williamsburg blue. And that will give us our green for our ampersand there. Okay, and then the shine is the color that it is, which is honey brown. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and base those letters first, same way as I did when I showed this earlier, and then we'll go from there and get the details on. All right, next we'll go ahead and we'll highlight our letters. And so we'll go in, load our brush. Remember, the thing that I like about this brush is you don't have to have it all completely flat when you are shading or highlighting. Shading and highlighting are universally comparable terms. One just uses light color and the other uses dark color, so you're doing the same technique. Anyway, so in this space where my brush is going to be too fat for that skinny little top of the eye, I'll get out another cute tip. I threw my other one away. I was trying to clean up my madhouse here. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll start out flat and not so wet. See how that just puddled right there? That's why we use a dryer float. Okay, so come here, I'm going to walk it down a little bit, and then I'm going to tip my brush, and I'm back on my angle a little bit, I'm not straight up and down. Tip my brush, and then I'm going to go flat again, and then tilt it up into this area. I'll clean up that little blurble right there. And then from here, what I want to do is I want to walk this down into the next area. It's still a little bit wet. If your brush is too wet, you're going to be floating, and if you are floating, then what's going to happen is you're going to make a mess all over your letter. Okay, and so I'm going to clean that up. Still just a little too wet. Isn't that funny? You know, you think that you're floating with a good technique, and I am, but I'm floating to float and not floating to put fading color, if that makes any sense at all. Okay, so next we'll go to the next one. Hopefully my paintbrush will dry out. I'll walk that down. I'll treat each little section as a section. I'll just tickle that and walk that down. Okay. We could dry rub this as well. That would be an easy way to get around this, but we still have to float to cinch the color up there. Okay, so floating down. I haven't added any more water, but suddenly I have a little bit of pooling. Blot again. Probably picked it up from when I blended on my palette just now. Okay. The nice thing about doing this technique is when I go and do my drop shadows, it will clean up a lot of bad areas, like any little messes that I come to at the edge. So then when I'm wanting this to really fade down here on the R, what I do is I use my clean side only. My toe isn't touching, and then I just use the clean side to tickle and clean up. Honestly, I have no idea why this works, but it just seems to. I'm going to go back here and reinforce this guy. Clean up. Listen to the trucks go by, right? Okay, now we'll go to our color on our green while we're waiting. We don't want to run through all of that while we're waiting for that to dry, so that's going to be basically the same color. We're going to use our green. I'll probably have to mix that with a palette knife. Apparently I didn't do a tremendously fantastic job of cleaning up because I can't find my palette knife. Okay, so we'll take some of our Indian turquoise and some of our green. We'll make a highlight color. Now this is going to depend on how dark or how green you made your color. So even though the instructions will say this amount of paint, you want to make sure that you are matching up with what colors you're using. Okay, that's where like the value finder and stuff will come in handy, is it will allow you to judge what you've done. Okay, so remember we're going to want a dry float. So I'll get it blended and then I'll make sure I'm blotted. Okay, same thing here. God bless pointy-ended Q-tips. Okay, so just go in and just be tucking the paint where we needed it. So get to a bigger area. Now I can also let this dry and I could go in and totally just dry rub it now that I've floated next to the edge. So if I wanted to cheat and sneak, I'll show you what that looks on this one since it's a bigger letter. Now we'll get into our True Ochre on the shine word. Now you could have complete amount of fun with these letters. It would be, I thought about this, I thought about polka dotting some of them. You could totally go folk art with these. Notice that I'm starting on the E back here, and notice that I started all the time on this far edge. The reason for that is I'm not going to be running my hand through the wet stuff. So it's a strategic starting point. Way too wet. Okay, just swoop around. I feel like this is all very repetitive. If this is dry, then I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would do that lettering. I'm going to take this smallest little brush. Look at how tiny this is. I mean, that would fit in any of these. So I'm going to go into my highlight color for green. I'm going to rub it off on my paper towel. And then what I would do is I would just rub on the extension of the highlight and bring that down. Much easier to rub something than it is to float it on precise little corners. Now I didn't do my little tongue thing here, but what I can do is go ahead and get it highlighted up the middle and then bring my float in on top of it to clean up the edging. See why you need to float. This is all dark around here. I could do the same thing with the Indian turquoise up on the top. If I wanted to bring that down or smooth anything out, I could do that. There's actually one smaller than this. There's an 1/8 inch brush, which would be ideal for this circumstance. All right, so I'm going to finish the highlight on my letter, and then I'm going to shade the base of them. The shading is done exactly the same way, but I will show you on the rise word. Okay, next I've reversed the box around, and I'm going to float with my shading color. And I'm also going to highlight, and I'll show you that too. Now you always want to be careful with the shading color. You don't want to take over the universe, so I'm going to assess this as I'm doing it and say, okay, how's that look? I think it's fine. We want to leave some middle value there, which means that base coat value. You know, there's no sense we would have just base coated it in the light and saved ourselves some work if we didn't want it there. Bring that on up. Okay. Now to highlight again, I'll flip it around. We could do one of two things. Let's see what I did over here. Okay, now I didn't really highlight one more time. I am going to on the S, so I'll show you that. I'm going to use Golden Straw. And then that we will keep up amongst the upper area. This is an excellent place to ask yourself if you're getting too bright. Like I think you can see, like this is fairly glowing. So let's go ask our Color Tool Oracle here. If I can find it in my pile. All right, so here's our colors, and we'll look at them up through the lens. Okay, so you can see that they're fairly balanced. And I'll wreck one of these to show you what the difference would be. Let's get some white out. I once did a Rosemary West project that had some roses. It was a long tray. I know a bunch of you have seen this pattern. Long tray with white roses at either end, and it was a mixed project, and I was unfamiliar with mixing paints. I ended up with white roses because it said paint them white, but my white should have been the mix that they were talking about. So I'm going to wreck this, and I'm going to put just like a white stripe up there. Now when we hold that over the top, and you can't really see it very well, can you? Let's see if our red will show it. Okay, so can you see that white stripe? And actually you can see that our upper letters are looking much darker than our lower letters, okay, but they are cool colors too. Here our highlights are looking balanced, except for we all know that that white is too bright. Let's do it this way. Let's do white, white, white up here. Let's see if we can tell that way. Okay. So now, look what's happened to, let's get it so you can see it. Look what's happened to our R right there. You see that top has become a glowing top. Now you would be able to see that and you would be able to say, whoa, that's bright. But sometimes we just don't know what we're looking for. Okay, so now in order to get this paint off of there, what can I do now that I've base coated it? What you can do is you can use the triple threat eraser dipped in a little bit of water when the paint is dry, and that's going to take that paint right off for me. It doesn't hurt paint at all when the paint is dry and the eraser is dry, but when the eraser is wet, it'll remove my paint. And it'll do it with spit too, but that's kind of slightly grosser. And just blot it off. Okay, now I've got it all cleaned up. Anyway, so very valuable. One of the hardest tools in the world to describe is the two value finders. They're something that are it's very elusive for me to describe how it works without you being able to see actual examples, so I'm just trying to provide the examples here for you. All right, so now we will go through. I've got a still shade, but I want to show you the drop shading because that's what's going to be next. Drop shading is going to be soft black, and the soft black is going to be just slightly thinned. Okay, and we're going to go off to the right, to the left sides and under, right next to the letters. I'm using the Pro Round because it'll make that wonderful flat. We go into all, did I just do that wrong? I totally did not just do that wrong. Yeah. Every now and again your brain just messes with you. I'm still thinking I did it wrong. I don't know why. Okay. And then when you get to the ends of the letters, just let it kind of gradually just go off there. Okay, next I'm going to highlight the letters on the shine, and that's going to be with Golden Straw, and I'm going to use the dry brush. And I'm going to flick that. I floated once, and I'm going to flick it in, shape following, just bringing it down. I want that airy dry brushed kind of look. So once you have it floated, and you can just flick it into your letters. Okay, then the decorating step is going to be using the colors that we highlighted with a little bit of water in them. Okay, so I'm going to start with Desert Turquoise, and then I'm just going to drag this across my lettering, getting a little bit softer as I go down the letter. Okay, just straight across. Just keep it out of the middle. You don't want it completely, a little bit in the middle is okay. Make it straight for each letter because these letters go all every which way. And then we'll go to the dark as well. We'll mix some water in with that. And then we'll go up the letter. And I want to be careful about running my hand through. Okay, just right up the letter. Just adds a little visual appeal. Like I said, you could polka dot them, you could do all kinds of things. I got a little crazy on my E, I think. Okay, so that's the detail on the letters. Alright, it's time to do some banding and see if we can't pull this puppy together. Okay, I want my banding on this particular one to be set at this lip right here. So I'm going to use my compass, and I'm just going to go right along all the sides. Obviously, probably don't need to do that side. Okay, then we'll take the same measurement, find our lid, and we're going to do the same thing at the top. Whoops. I'm going for balance here. How fast and easy is that? Okay, then we're going to tape. 1/2 inch stretchy tape. I don't need stretchy tape for this, but that's just happens to be what I'm using. It was a size that kind of made me happy. I've got a drawer full of tape. You never know when you're going to need tape to curve for you. So then I'll just tuck those little ends off that way. Get everything taped up. Alright, so I've decided to go ahead with the gold. You could band in any color. What I've got here is I've got my ink sweeper, and I'm tapping it off over here on the edge. I don't want to scoop this up and have this big wad of paint on my piece. These are non-absorbent little sponge applicators. They're totally reusable. And then what I'm going to do is go the fast, quick, easy way. So I am going to tap straight up and down. That's going to leave me with no ridge on the bottom. I'm going to be able to do 2 sides at one time and then allow it to dry. Okay, reapply. If you have it juicy, you'll bleed under and you'll swoop around the edge of your piece, and we don't want that. Okay, so now I'm going to let that one dry, and then we'll go to this one. Now you could do 2 coats if you want. I'll show you a little trick in just a second. On the top, I'm leaning in towards the tape slightly. Now you see why I used a slightly thicker piece of tape, because otherwise I would get, it would go over my piece of tape if I didn't. Okay, so I've got a nice clean top edge, and we'll see if we can't put this someplace. I'll come back over to here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tap it with one more coat, just to eliminate base coats. Now I'm going to take my fingertip daubers, which I saw one running around here someplace. I now have a couple of sets of these things because they're elusive. They're just these little fingertippy things, and I keep putting them down places and then they roll and whatever. Okay, I'm going to go into milk chocolate, and then I'm going to tap towards my center on both sides. It's the easiest shading and highlighting you've ever done. I'm going to go into Dirty Brush, into Soft Black, which I probably should have switched, and do my corners. Okay, I'll tap it off on a paper towel and see if I can rescue the Soft Black into the milk chocolate here. Yeah, I think that'll work. I should have used a different color. I mean a different dauber. Okay, so there's my second base coat. And I'll go in with milk chocolate. It's wet and wet. We've already learned that that's going to help you blend. Okay, and I think we'll use a brush for our highlight strokes, which are going to be True Ochre. I'll flip this over so I have a place to put my hand. And then let's see. Let's go with a hash mark. And I'm not going to have to worry about keeping it in the lines. Carry it over. And then we'll go into Dirty Brush into the Golden Straw and just pick that up just a little bit brighter right there in the middle. Okay. We need another one. A soft black one. Let's do the corners. And you know, I think I need one more coat of the Golden Straw in the middle, or the True Ochre. We'll do the True Ochre before the hash marks. Yeah, I like that better. And then we'll go hash marky. With the Golden Straw. Working wet and wet, that's kind of taken off my paint a little bit, so we want to make sure that I'm leaving paint behind. Okay. And now let's take a look and see, except where I've done this all the way around. So then this is what we have for our border. See, it's all pre-shaded and everything. And we'll do that to all of our borders. Okay, now as I was laying, I did my whole rim, just laying and laying and laying, and the little wet edge there made my marks. Now if I set my piece down on this, this is going to loosen and it's going to come and stick on my piece. So what I'll do is just wet my paper towel. I will remove anything that's sticking on there and then wipe off the loose pieces, and I'm ready to keep going without damaging my piece. Okay, so the next step is, I like how that turned out, is we need to give him something to stand on. I think that's going to be another band of yellow or gold. That is going to be done the same way. We'll obviously use our band there to tape onto, but I don't think I want this band quite as thick. About half the thickness maybe, so maybe 1/4 and 1/8. Oops, keep it upright. Gotta keep your compass at the same angle, otherwise it'll make funny lines. So then I'll just do the same technique with that. Okay, I have two situations. One, I'm getting ready to rebase coat the base of my Lazy Susan, and this is the condition of my pour number 1. I'm not even certain what I did with that. And then when I was dry brushing my blue, I left it in the paint. I left my paint in there. When you're dry rubbing, that is, it's very, very easy to leave your brushes off to the side. I'm going to use my brush cleaner and restorer. It's non-toxic, biodegradable, all those things, low vapor, non-flammable. And then I'll just go in there, and you can see that it's immediately taking the paint out. I left varnish in my brush at convention, and the next day, because I was demoing the glass stain and how it's so much shinier on your ornaments. And the next day I came back to my brush, my nice round, pro round brush in glass stain. Anyway, so then I can scrub that out, and my brush is nice and flexible. I can wait till it comes clean. Okay. I don't have to, now just rinse that with water because it's water soluble. And now I have a restored crescent brush. Now I'll go into this. This is really huge and it's going to make a big mess, so I'm not going to clean it all the way on camera just because I'd have to be by a sink just to splosh around. Okay, and you need a lot. Okay, so we're releasing a whole new color. There's all my reds that I was painting with. So I'll have to go and pour a little bit more on this, and then I would work this into my cleaner here. Once again, I just need to, and this has got so much stuff trapped into it. If you get the large bottle of brush cleaner and restorer, oh, look at that stuff. I imagine there's probably enough paint in here. The neat thing about these brushes is even, there goes the red, I can see it releasing in there. Even with paint in these brushes, they are awesome. Look at how flexible and beautiful that brush is. I love these brushes. It's the oval glaze, 3/4 inch or the 1 inch. I use them to base coat and trim my house when I'm painting my house as well. Okay, so I'm going to go finish this. Pretty soon I'll have a lovely purple color that I can base coat a project with. And that's joking. Okay, I'll go work the rest of this out and then I'll get on with this project. Alright, as I'm making decisions, I'm working, getting my stuff done here. I've got my words base coated the same as the blue letters. Okay, so that's with the mix. I'm going to go ahead and make strokes. I'm going to use my number 2 round, pro round, and I'm going to hope it's big enough. I'm going to go ahead and got a little ball of paint on the end. I'm going to make some strokes here because I'm going to shade them. And reload each time so that I get the same amount. Okay, and we'll just end that with a dot. And we're going to shade everything. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and spatter the center of my words. And this is going to be tricky because I don't really want everything spattered the same. I don't want my words all spattered, so I'm going to go ahead and tear off some tracing paper. I'll just kind of put it near my words. I'll get rid of my... Okay. I've got autumn red with some antique white. I want this in the middle. And then we'll take that off. I'll have to wait till it dries just a little bit. I don't think I'd mind it on my and. That doesn't bug me too much. Okay. If you spatter down, if you put your handle down where you want it and then spatter right above your handle, it'll put it right where you want it. So I can spatter not on my words. And we've got a hole right here. There we go. So now I've got a little bit more brightness in the center. Okay, now wait till that dries. You've got to be really careful with spatters because they take a little while to dry, so you can hit it with the blow dryer. I've got things drying over here with strokes. I've got things drying over here. All kinds of stuff going on. Okay, when we get down to our letters here, what I want to do is I want to go into the middle. We're going to do this a little bit different than we did the letters on the other side. We'll go into the middle and we'll just highlight the centers with a dry brush. Right down the middle of all of them. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and do our highlight straight down the center of this as well. Straight down our stroke. By doing the dry brush, it just makes it just a little bit easier to get right down the middle there. And I reinforce it with a slightly smaller, just a little ha-cha right there. To make the ha-cha sound while you're painting, it makes it go better. Okay, now I'm going to have it shaded and highlighted just right there, top and bottom in the middle. So then I'll get my smaller number 6, whatever size brush this is called, the curved flat. And then we'll shade top and bottom on here. Okay. Just a slightly different application than we had for the other. Remember, we can just use that toe if we need to. And then we'll flip it over and do the bottom. I like the idea of carrying that blue and the green around the piece without overwhelming it. I think the gold and red is the main color theme. And then reverse it and go backwards there. Then on the green, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take the strokes here and we'll shade to either side. So now it won't matter if my stroke was gorgeous or not gorgeous. And I'll also shade on the end here just to give it a little bit more green vibe. So see how that works out. Okay, so I'll come right up from there. And I think we'll go ahead and use the fat end of our paintbrush. And we'll go into our desert turquoise and just dot that. Okay, now watch our dots because the dots will stay wet for a long time. Okay. Whoops, and no lettering is complete without drop shading. It's going to be thinned soft black and in the same place as all the others. That just really adds a nice finish to it. Not too watery. You actually want to be able to see this nice strong dark color. It's going to be a little harder to see because that's the mix that we have with the red and the soft black. But that does just clean up the letters nicely. So under and to the left. I can skinny things up and clean them up if I need to. Okay, while I'm waiting for my stuff down here to dry, I'll go ahead and start masking my bird, which is just the main body part. I don't need to worry about his legs. And we'll spatter him with that same red mixed with the antique white. Watch everything around you get spattered as well. he's got, see if I can get right in there. His legs are. Okay, now I'll take that off gently. And now he's got his spatters and they can dry. Now, what you do want to be careful is if you've got spatters anywhere around you, for example, on your mat, you want to go wipe those off right away because they stay wet. So if you put another piece down there and start working on it, this is what I love, is I can tell exactly where I've been with whatever I've been there with. All right, we're going to add some thinned Indian turquoise, and we're going to line right inside of our drop shading to pop these letters out, because they're dark on dark, so we just need one more fine step. Okay, and I've got my turquoise dot, and I went ahead and put my desert turquoise dot with my Indian turquoise dot right on top. I've got my spatter. I'm waiting for dots to dry. I'm spattered on almost all the sides, and then we'll see where we go from here. I've got my base based in the same color as the dark red with the mix of soft black and deep burgundy. I'm going to use the Jumbo Dauber. I've decided that I'm going to do these checks. I don't want to mess up my base color, so I'm going to use the Jumbo Dauber and just dab on that base. Yeah, perfect. The ink sweeper would work as well, but mine's sitting in water. You could actually, let's do it this way. Go right along there and give it a little swipey poo. Okay, if you get anything bled over, just wipe it off real quick. If you don't press, then you'll only get the perfect little basing line, like a little ridge line. No pressing though. So we always want to push. Okay, perfect. Okay, now look what I've done. Aha! I think I'll put that up on something and bury that in my water bin. So whenever you have all these edges, you're going to make a mess. So be prepared to make the mess and clean up after it, and you'll be fine. Okay, there's a couple of ways that you can antique, okay, and I'm going to show you two ways. One, you can use a staining and antiquing medium. So what I can do is I can wipe this on my dry surface. This is my base for the Lazy Susan. Okay, so you take your paper towel and you wipe on the staining and antiquing medium. Okay, you work in smaller areas. You don't do the whole thing at once because, like, it's a summer day here, so. Then I can, just like I was buffing or shining my shoes, those of you who are old enough or were Army brats would know what I'm talking about there. I'm going to go into the edge of my piece, and I'm just going to buff that right on there with my paper towel. Super simple, super easy, super awesome. I'm using black. Okay, I can wipe it off. The negative to using staining and antiquing medium is it reactivates with water. The positive of using staining and antiquing medium is that it reactivates with water. It just depends on whether or not you want it to do that or not. So now I'll show you as soon as I finish this. You let this dry and then you use DecoArt's spray sealer to seal. Okay, it's a sealer finisher. Anytime you use pens or reactivating with water type products, then you'll want to spray to finish it. And you can give it one nice misted coat and then you can go to your regular varnish. Okay, so I think it's really important to know how to handle the different mediums. Okay, so I'll go here and just finish this, buff it to get a nice smooth look. Wherever your medium isn't, the paint will grab, so you'll need to know that. Okay, and if I could hold this piece still, I can wipe it back. I can make the shading less or more. Lighter pressure. Okay, I think I'm liking that. We'll give it a couple of spatters. Reactivating with water. Remember, don't make it too watery. I'll let that dry thoroughly and then I'll give it a spray. Okay, the other thing that we want to do on our base, and I'll show you the next piece after this. Let's get rid of our black. So we have lots of black spatters on there. Is we're going to take a brush, I've got probably a number 1/2 inch or a number 12 workhorse flat, and we're going to use soft black. And what I'll do, I had some sketchy ones on here. See if I can get you on camera. I'm just going to lay that right on there. Oops, a little bit of water. Not too watery, so I'll blot. I don't even know if you can see it because the top's wet. I've got to do this. I'm going to estimate that width, pop over, and let my brush do my measuring for me. Okay, and then I'll just do soft black checks all the way around. Okay, this is the top that I finished. I've got some spatters up there, and I've went ahead and floated. So you can choose which way, and you want to be careful of the black. I'm going to mix a little black and soft black with my shading. So the other way that you can do this is you can come into these corners with an angle shader, and you can round that over that way. You could tape it if you wanted to. You can decide. You could do the whole edge. I'll show you how that looks. So that's how that looks. I could go on the whole thing. I'm afraid the black on that might get a little macabre looking. Okay, so I think maybe do that on there and then wipe it off. And you don't have to avoid your corner. Okay, so I'm going to do that on all my edges of all. I'm going to definitely put a little of the soft black in there just because that's going to soften it. On these edges, I'm going to get control by floating. Okay, you'll always switch it so that you're going in a good direction for you to see what you're doing. Okay, and we'll just work our way around. Okay, on the edges of my tea box, however, this is going to be one of those examples of place where make sure I've got everything cleaned off. Now I'm getting almost done. I don't want to wreck everything. This is going to be an example of one of the places I'm going to want to use my staining and antiquing medium. I want it soft, I want it faded, I want it awesome. Make sure you've got everything erased that you're going to want erased off of there. And I'm going to just do this whole side all at one time. Make sure your dots are dry. Go ahead and get this area too while we're at it. I'll pick up a little bit of, I'm mostly going to lean to soft black over here because I have a very strong red color. It's not so black. Okay, so see how that's framing everything? That's really nice. Okay, you want to kind of put it on there, it kind of sitting where you want it. Okay, and we're going to want it off of my band there because that we worked really hard to keep that band nice and bright. So that's where it reactivates with water. We like it. Okay. Now, let me get this so I can look at it. Find another little piece of paper towel. Lint-free paper towels is what you need, and that is Blue Shop towels, or I think it's Viva is the other name. I've never used Viva, so don't quote me on that. Now I'm going to put my paper towel kind of nice and flat, and then I'm going to antique out to the edge. I'm dusting almost. Okay, and that gives me a lot of nice softening without okay, so if I hated it, I could just re-wet this and redo it. Okay, so there's no loss there. But see what a difference that makes versus that on the edges. Okay, so much different. Now we can go down to the bottom area, which is darker. And we can just go ahead and give it a little antique-y wipey poo. Okay, So it's very flexible medium. You can totally, I could go back over this, I can mist it, I can deepen my edges. I'll wait till it's dry. You want to be really careful with this. I'll do this side now. I do have to erase my fine T lines. Make sure that I don't have any hangers-oners, and I'm not so sure that dot's dry yet. I think we'll give him just a little bit more time with the blow dryers. Okay, so my top here needs a little bit of accent, a little bit of highlight. I'm going to use deep burgundy. And I'm going to dry rub. I'm going to dry paper towel. And I'm not going to dry it off very much because this color gets swallowed by this dark color. So I'm going to just go ahead and dry rub it right there in the middle. I'm using a medium crescent stencil brush. They're wonderful, they're awesome, they're cheap, they're affordable, and they do great work. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and do all that there. Then I'm going to liquefy some True Red. And I'm going to splay apart my brush. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to go here and I'm going to splay open my White Wonder. And then I'm going to, right in the middle, make a crisscross pattern. Continue. Okay, and then that gives it just a little bit of an accent versus this plain kind of thing. And we'll see how that should dry down to the perfect color. The other thing that I want to do is add a little bit of wheat to my behind the words here. I could collect my parts here. So what we'll do is we'll get a couple palettes working here. We'll take some honey brown in our liner. Okay. Now I'm going to want to watch this because if I don't like it, I can take it away. Okay, I'm going to shoot some of that out there. I'm going to shoot this out. And we want the angles to go the right way. And I'll have some crisscross little strokes. Alright, and then when we're doing wheat heads, then you just want to take and kind of poke them up that way. And it's like a little flick. We don't want them very dark, very strong. Then we'll take some True Ochre and we'll do the same thing just here on these main stems, not everywhere. And get the angle right. I'm going to pull them towards you. And they don't have to hit exactly. They're probably going to be prettier if you don't hit them exactly right on top of each other. And my brush has taken a beating and is now flaying out, which is actually adding a little dry brush kind of look, and I'm liking how that is. Okay, and maybe one more highlight with some Golden Straw. I don't want to take away from the lettering. Just a couple kernels in the middle. A couple bands down here. Okay, and we have some little wheat. Now you can't have wheat without spatters. So White Wonder, honey brown, anchor your brush, tap off a little harder. Okay, and then you can do maybe Golden Straw next. Okay, and I don't think my brush is heavy enough. Good, I like it. Maybe we'll give it a little pop over here too. Ta-da! All right, now we're down to the finishing touches. So I've got my bowl based in honey brown, and then I had to go get a new flat brush because my number 4 was trashed. Just using this to make the checks. Okay, I've got this set up where you can't see it. But what I've got is I've got my eggs on a piece of tape. And that way I can take my dotting tool, or stylus, or my Easy Dot tool, and I can make my dots. I'm going to use, I think, Desert Turquoise. I'll just make these, I don't know if I'm going to get a big enough dot with this. Dotted little eggs. And let them sit there till they're dry. Okay, one of the next things that I'm going to do is I want to put a blue pinstripe around my bowl and maybe even around my ball feet. We're starting to get a little bit funny, shaky, little tiny itty bitty. So with this, I'm just not going to use my compass at all. I'm just going to use the top band, and I'll use my 1/8 inch stretchy tape, and because this is concave, I'll need the stretchy tape to bend a little. So I'll pull it as I apply it. The tape circles. I'll use another one. Okay, and then I'll just estimate because it's going to be fine. Just want a little blue carried through the project. Okay. I'm pulling as I'm applying. Okay, and then we bray it all down. And fingertip daubers. Now, this isn't going to work so well. What else can I use to tap with? What I'll use is, I need a fluffily brush, I think. So the reason the fingertip dauber won't work, I'll use a fat round and tap it on. Okay, the reason that won't work is because it will go over the edge of the tape. And obviously tapping with the edge of your flat is not the most optimal either because it's going to be juicier paint. However, okay, so I'll go around and I'll repeat and then I'll peel the tape off. Okay, on my bowl I think it's a little bit too dark. I'm going to use the True Ochre. My yellow is just a little too dark, and I'm going to highlight those little checks. This is not the bowl, this is the bowl stand. And then I may go ahead and give it a little bit of golden straw on there as well. Now you'll reattach your pieces as soon as you've varnished. It's much easier to do it after you've varnished because then you don't have anything in your way. I'll go into golden straw and give it just a little bit of something. Very little. I think the red feet might be on their own. I don't know that I'm feeling the whole give them a band of blue. Okay, I've got that. I've got my bowl. We'll varnish all the little pieces like the eggs and things like that before we glue them in, or glue them in and then varnish like around them, depending on the glue that you're going to use. If you use epoxy, then you don't have to worry about if you use epoxy, you don't have to worry about the glue not sticking to things. With the ball feet, I'll go ahead and just give them a coat of varnish right now, but I won't varnish on this piece because I'm going to use wood glue to attach them. Alright, the next piece that I have to do is I have to put everything together. So I've got my little eggs and they're dry. So I'll get my tape, clean up my mess. They're going to go in the little bowl, and the bowl's going to go on top of the thing. So I can use wood glue if I want to, Decor Art has a new wood glue out. Okay, put a little squirt on there. And then we'll sandwich. Notice no varnish, no paint. Okay, probably way too much of that though. We'll sandwich that on there and squish it together. Now my eggs are going to be a little bit different because they are going to be nesting inside, and I think it'll be hard to have the contact points that you need. So I'm going to fill my little bowl with some hot glue. Incidentally, this mat is also good for hot glue guns. Okay, well, now I better pull some of that out. And we'll hot glue this last one on top. Okay, now my top has got varnish, whoops, and I put it right in the little swipe of wood glue that I did. Good gravy. Okay, this is why I don't craft professionally. Okay, now we're going to take our lid, which has got, it's actually still cold, which means that it's still wet. I've got it varnished, and I am going to go ahead and hot glue my corners on here. I think that's going to be a nice touch. Now, you're not supposed to have varnish on things that you have the hot glue with, but in this case, we're going to make an exception. Okay, and we'll hot glue. I could screw this in, or I can just glue it. I think we'll glue it. I think I'm going to wait till it dries.